of law that a layperson won't know and won't know how to respond to, and can wind up giving up legal rights and options that they're not even aware that they're giving up because they're not a lawyer.
Now, are laypersons held to the same standard as attorneys when they're representing themselves in court?
Absolutely. They're required to act with the same procedure and protocol and knowledge. And it's always very helpful, I recommend, to prospective clients that they seek the assistance of an attorney, be it a consult or on a very limited basis, to make it more cost effective even if they're going into court by themselves. In family law, usually the families know what issues are going to be coming up. So to bring the family members with you so that if issues come up while you're there, they can testify on your behalf or to these facts, and to remember to remain as calm as possible.
Now, many viewers, their access to the court system is through the television shows. How different are the television shows from actual court?
It depends on the county.
Yeah, well, the TV shows are a little more dramatic than the actual courtroom, and I think that has to be that way to get viewers to watch. Court is very structured. It's not as loud and dramatic as the TV shows. If it was, then no one would really watch those TV shows if it was as boring as court really is.
Understood. Well, we know that there's access to the law. There's websites and forums where people can initiate legal proceedings. Are there any type of legal proceedings that you definitely recommend someone not represent themselves?
I would recommend not representing yourself at the federal level for appeals for Social Security cases. That's when it becomes, you go to the federal level once the case has been denied several times. So after the first denial, you appeal it, and then there's another appeal. You go in front of the adjudicator, and then after that appeal, it's in front of the appeal board, and after that appeal, it's at the federal level. So once it gets to that federal level, it's probably time to hire someone to step in for you to make sure you actually receive those disabilities, because there's something that's not being done on those other levels that you didn't do to get it in the first place. So once it gets to that level, it's time to hire an attorney.
Okay. And so in workers' compensation and other cases of that nature, do you mostly represent, or do you mostly see people that represent themselves, or are most people represented by an attorney in workers' comp?
In workers' compensation, most people try to represent themselves in the beginning, and then they're denied. And then when they're denied, or they're having difficulty getting what they're expecting to receive from a workers' comp injury, that's when they come in and see me. But it's important with workers' compensation and also with Social Security cases to keep track of all medical evidence, all of the records. That's something that people who represent themselves fail to do. They have to keep track of all their medical records, all the expenses that's going out, even the gas that they're putting in their car to get from point A to B to go to those doctors. A lot of people don't have their medical evidence together.
And in my practice, I always recommend that if there's, excuse me, if there's a situation where you're getting divorced, whether it's contested or uncontested, it's important to have an attorney look over the paperwork, put the paperwork together, and know that all the legal issues are being addressed before it's filed with the court. It's also much more cost effective, if it's uncontested, to have an attorney present the paperwork to the court on your behalf. In a criminal law setting, I think it's important to have an attorney whenever you're looking at jail. There's not do-overs. There are appeals, but appeals are only as strong as what happened in court the first time. So it's always important, from my perspective and in my experience, to consult with an attorney, have legal counsel, even if it's on a limited basis, rather than go in pro se and then come out looking like, what happened? And how can I get past this? And sometimes you just can't, and you've done irreparable damage.
So what I'm hearing is preparation is key, and if you're prepared on the front end, then that equips you to present a strong case for yourself.
Exactly.
Correct. Tell me this, what are some of the most common types of cases where people represent themselves?
Typically, I've heard and seen magistrate court, where there's a warrant which is being requested for temporary restraining orders, and sometimes for domestic violence even.
I see a lot of just Social Security disability cases. And I said everything was form-driven earlier, and if you don't mind if I can go back to that so I can explain how people can actually access those forms. Well, the Social Security Office has a website. It's ssa.gov. You would go online, you would type in the search engine, you type in Social Security Disability Initial Application, and you actually apply for disability online. So you literally plug in the information as just like completing an application. You plug in all the information, you hit next. You go to the next screen, you hit next. And to be prepared for the initial application that you are completing on the website, you have to make sure you have a list of all doctors that you've seen, the approximate date that you first saw the doctors, the last time you saw the doctors, the upcoming appointment that you have with the doctors, list of all medications, the doctors that prescribe the medications, how often you take those medications, any side effects that you have to those medications. You also would need to have list of all work that you've had within the last 15 years. All of that, it's a lot of information you need up front. But on the website, there's a checklist that you would just print out, or actually you don't have to print it out, you just go and view the checklist. Make sure you have everything in order before logging in to apply for the Social Security.
So by the way, with Social Security and workers' comp, do you have to have funds up front to hire an attorney to represent you, or what's the fee structure in those types of laws?
Right, no you don't. Everything is contingent in workers' comp and Social Security, very much like a personal injury case. So with Social Security, the attorney can get no more than 25% of the past due benefits, or $6,000, whichever is less. And with workers' comp, you can get no more than 25%. So it's contingent. You don't need any money up front to hire an attorney. The attorney just gets a percentage of whatever they're able to get for you. And that's a good thing for people to know, because some people don't know that. They want to know, how much do I need up front? Well, you don't need anything.
Oh, that's great. Well, Attorney Young, if you cannot afford an attorney, what are some ways that citizens can get legal representation?
Well, they can go to legal aid. They can apply for the public defender's office if it's a criminal matter. They can also go to the Georgia Bar has a website with a list of attorneys. Many of the local municipalities have websites and bar associations, and they can call attorneys that are of interest to them. They can research them on the web and call and say, will you work at a flat rate or a reduced fee or hourly for a particular purpose. So there's a lot of ways, once they open up the dialogue with the attorney and they're comfortable with that attorney about fees and how to structure fees. Also, many attorneys offer payment plans to make it more reasonable, because they understand, as I do, that it's so important to have good legal representation, and that they try to work with the clients as much as they can.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I feel that the information that you both have shared empowers our viewers and allows people at least to have a starting point in their research before they go to research to find an attorney. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
When we come back, we'll wrap up today's segment on pro se representation. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Legally Speaking. Sonia, while we always advise people to speak with an attorney if they have a legal concern, our guests today have given much information on how people can represent themselves successfully in court.
And I think some of the great information that they gave, whether you're a plaintiff, defendant, civil, or criminal case, I hope our viewing audience will take this advice if they ever find themselves in need. But to our viewing audience, we do want you to remember that this show is not intended to provide legal advice. And if you do have a legal concern, it's always best to consult an attorney, even if you do plan to represent yourself in court.
Well, that just about wraps up this edition of Legally Speaking, but we'd love to hear from you. We'd like to invite you to be a part of the program. Send us your questions or feedback to legallyspeaking@gabwa.org. or call the Voice of GABWA at 678-825-5675. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at ls_GABWA. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Kenya Johnson.
And I'm Sonia Brown. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Legally Speaking.